Hi, this is Lori from To the Trade, and I have Niall here. Hi, Niall.
Hi.
And we have a special guest all the way from Canada, Jean-Stéphane Beauchamp. Hi, how are you?
Fine, thanks. And how are you?
Very excited to have you here.
Very
You
excited to be
are
here.
a designer that I've admired for a long time, and you and
Oh,
I've
thank
had
you.
some conversations behind the scenes, and I thought you would be very interesting for our interior design community to hear from. Tell us a little bit about you and your firm.
Well, it'll be really easy. I'm a firm of one,
Yes.
um, a one-man band, as they would say. I've been at this for about 25 years. I've had previous incarnations because I actually started studying in design, then I went to fine arts
Right.
and then said, oh, that's not enough. I need to go into psychology and then art therapy. So after, yeah, and just realized that no, design is where I was supposed to be.
We
Um,
just had another conversation with another
nice.
designer right before, and we were talking about philanthropy and design. And I just think designers are people who, and this is just talking to designers as long as I have. I mean, they're service oriented because there's a part of it that's about beauty, but there's a part of it that's about giving back, I think.
Well,
Giving something to the world.
where I am now, I realize that I think I think if you do it right, you're actually increasing somebody's their quality of life.
Right.
And that's to me, it's kind of the end goal. I truly believe that a beautiful home is increasing your quality of life, making it more efficient, more just better use of your space. Increasing the value increases the quality of life. So that's what we're doing for people. And it has a lot, we're bringing a lot of value into their home, into their lives.
Would you say that that's your design philosophy and your approach is the end goal should always be increasing your enjoyment of your home, but also in making an impact on your actual enrichment of your life?
Honestly, that would be I think for me, that's where what I strive for. But I mean, in a more basic way, if I'm helping somebody out, sure. I mean, hopefully I can get to the point where I've really helped someone. I mean, sure, that's what I'm hoping for.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're doing it because I think design absolutely, they've had studies now on the neurological effects of interior design. And absolutely, a well-designed space does bring you more peace, does bring you more
Just the
feeling
feeling of safety,
yeah,
safety,
safety.
comfort. You relax. I'll actually make a parallel, an anecdote from a while back. A couple, a man and a woman, she was really into design and he wasn't really into it. And he kept saying, I don't want to live in a home that looks like, it's been designed. I don't care about these things. And so had a chat with him and, asked him, where do you like to go eat and where do you like to go stay and all this? And I said, it's funny that, you're not, no, not insulting anyone, but, you're not going for fast food. You're going to these places that are actually comfortable and beautiful.
Right.
So why wouldn't you want your home to be beautiful?
Right.
Wouldn't
I
you?
think that for a certain I love that you just said first of all, I want to come back to what you just said because that is brilliant right there. I think there are a lot of potential interior design clients that don't think they think design is not comfortable and not it's like living in a magazine
Yeah, I agree.
versus that's just not the truth. I mean, we're going to set you up for success
Yeah.
where your space works, it is beautiful, but you're still going to have laundry.
Yeah.
You're
I
gonna
mean,
have dishes in the
my
sink
goal, my
sometimes.
goal is that you don't have a velvet rope when you come in and, you have a bodyguard, telling certain people can come in. That's not the goal of design. I
No.
think that if you are in your home and every day you look around and love what you see and feel that you can use and touch, that's actually quite important. Then I mean, I think my clients are actually quite happy in their homes.
Right.
And I'll push it even further. This client, the way I responded was, yes, don't you want to be in a beautiful environment? And he said, oh, I don't need it to be as beautiful as your home. I said, well, you know what? My guests whether they like what I do or not, as in if it's their style or not, I have to kick them out. They feel happy and safe and they want to stay here. And, I'm giving myself a compliment, but that's the goal. I
Yeah,
want people to feel that in their own home.
I love
I
that.
want their guests and I want them, to say, do I really want to go to a hotel? I'm really happy at home. I was telling a client, I just came back from a meeting and I was telling a client on a smaller scale, I said, I'm starting to hate traveling because I have such a wonderful bed. I've worked on it so much and it helps to have a husband who works in bedding, but I go elsewhere and, I'll pay for a really good hotel room and I'm thinking, I can't wait to be at home.
You are speaking to the choir, first of
You
all.
know?
Niall and I feel exactly the same way. And I was like,
Agreed.
that's
Yeah.
the only thing that interior design has ruined for me is that
It's
I don't
good.
like I don't like to stay. I used to think that staying in a hotel
What's the
was
big
like
thing?
such a relief for me. I didn't, when I was younger and I didn't have a primary suite of my own and I didn't invest in the design and the bed and the bedding. And, now that I have a beautiful house and a beautiful bedroom with a mat, with the primary suite, I've got a beautiful shower and like I have a jetted tub. I have all of those things. Like I don't need to go somewhere to stay
But
somewhere that has
I
those
throw
features.
that at clients. It's like,
Yeah,
isn't it wonderful to feel like, maybe an exaggeration, but you feel like you're on vacation in your own home.
right.
Mhm.
You
Isn't that
do.
wonderful?
But it
And
also makes your taste and I'm sure every person listening who's in the world of design, it makes your taste and where you go so much more it's so much more expensive for me to travel now
but you know
because I
what?
do care about those things.
I
It's
think you can
great.
find beauty anywhere. And I actually try to travel on the cheap because I like food. So I'd rather spend on food.
Right.
But I go to places and you know what? I don't want Airbnb to be listening, but when I rent a house, I do reorganize everything.
You do.
No, I probably will be banned or something. Right. I reorganize stuff and occasionally, they've come in to do either cleaning or whatever, and they've written back to the owners, and the owner said, "Leave it as is." I love it. I love it. I'm just thinking, flow and use, and I've dragged a closet or an armoire to just make it easier on me. Yeah, it's a bit excessive, but I mean, if I'm going to be in a place for a week or two or three or four, I need it to work, and I do
And
that
you
with
be
my clients.
functional. Yeah.
Usually during consultation, I'll get up and start moving stuff around with their permission, of course. But I'll start moving stuff around, and then maybe I've shot myself in the foot. They don't need me after that, but sometimes it's just flow. And sometimes it's a feeling. And sometimes taking that little annoyance just makes and that's when the clients realize that I can make changes that will make you more comfortable.
I love that.
And
Have you felt that your personal design aesthetic has changed or evolved over the years since the very beginning? Or are you still attracted to the styles you always have been?
I think I have been attracted to this. I think even as a child, the style that I do is what I loved. It has evolved. Traveling has allowed me to become who I'm supposed to be because I see so many beautiful things elsewhere. And I tell myself, you know, it gives me permission to just go for it.
If
It
you see it, you know you can do it.
absolutely. And the one thing that has evolved and has changed is, and I hope no clients are listening, but I don't want to do what they want me to do anymore. I want them, it's sort of a cliche phrase, but I want it to be better than what they think they want.
What they think is possible,
Yeah.
probably
I
out
want
of the realm of their possibility. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I hope they are listening because that is remarkable.
because
I
that's
want
what I
you to
want.
have more than what you even think you could have.
I think you should. And I think you should be more daring. And I think you should take risks. And you have one home, one life, or whatever. Maybe you're lucky and you have several homes, but you have one life to live. Have fun.
Right. Is
It's
there a particular place that you've been that has inspired you more than others?
I would people would tease me if I didn't say Mexico because I go there a little too often. But the places on this planet that have really pushed me, South Africa, Morocco, and definitely Mexico. I mean, yes, everybody will say Paris, London, lovely, lovely, but for some reason, uh, the differences in color in the sky, in the sand, everywhere, South Africa is just
Agreed.
so beautiful.
Agreed.
And I find that people are, quite frankly, more daring. It is the quality of light. I mean, I'm in Canada, and for some reason, most designers here resonate with Scandinavian design. So it's very minimal color, and that's fine, but I think you can go further than that. Morocco for the quality of the light and just, their use of color. To me, that was just, but also the history, the layers of history and where all these designs come from. And Mexico, wherever you go, there is also a modernism in Mexico, which I just admire. But they have, and not to overgeneralize, but I find that they have absorbed all the different pieces of their history and are coming up with something that is just unique. And I find they are just more daring. That, not to insult anyone in Canada, but I find, there's really good design being done here. But those places that I visited, I come back and my brain is just recharged.
Have you heard of, and you probably would really like her work, Marjorie Skoras?
Yes.
Yeah,
She's
her, Curry and Company collection. So I had read an article about her when it was in Mexico and reached out to her. Love her work. I love her work.
I indirectly know her.
Oh, you do?
Well, long story short, my favorite place in Mexico, apart from Mexico City, is Merida, which is the capital of Yucatan. That's where Marjorie lives.
Yes.
Marjorie is friends with some of my best friends over there.
Oh, I think the work that she has done.
I have visited her home, and she has quite an eye. And
she does.
She's bold, and she does beautiful work.
Mixing fashion with
Absolutely.
with interiors. She's dreamy. She's
Yeah.
dreamy.
And
Yeah, I saw I think it was an Architectural Digest article about her. And I was just like, this woman has it. She's got it together.
oh yeah,
I love it. I love it.
I think traveling for me was the big. I don't necessarily. I'm not saying I'm looking for inspiration, but you said something really interesting. And just to get back to it, have I always had this style? It has evolved. There are always things that I've loved that have always resonated with me. I love collections. I love, accumulations of stuff. I will never be a purist and come into a room and have two chairs. I just can't do it. It just doesn't resonate with me. That's what I love. But where it has evolved is actually through travel. It has liberated me. And before that, I was doing what my clients wanted. And I hate to say this, but I was almost following trends. Now is the one thing that I have done is I do not care about trends.
Right.
And far from it. I try to not avoid actively, but I just don't care.
Do you think that you have gotten to a cycle in your career that the reason you don't care about trends is you've probably seen so many come and go at this point?
Yep.
And it's just
I feel old.
And honestly, you can pick any trend and
They'll come back.
work it today in modern times in a unique way.
Yeah.
We've been talking about cabinetry, and when you were gone now, I had Jonathan Rowland, who is a cabinet rep that I really love, and he was on Post KBiz, and we were talking about how stained cabinetry is coming back, and I was just like, it's stained wood. It's never really gone out of style. I mean, I get it that white shaker cabinets were all the rage, but there were lots of people with stained cabinets, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
And it just doesn't, it feels like that's such a silly thing to go in and out of style.
Yeah.
Stained wood,
I was doing an interview for something about trends and all this, and she said, "What's your opinion on trends?" And I said, "I hate them for many reasons. I wait a couple of years to see which ones have survived.
Right.
If I'm going to look at a trend and if I'm going to change something, I want to see which ones will survive. Sometimes it's a combination of colors that I haven't seen in, I have to go through my books to find that combination of colors. That I find exciting. Sure.
Yeah.
But, something that I have seen, I've been doing this long enough that yes, I have seen trends come and come back and go, and fine. I find that it's just a method of trying to sell something, and it pushes the wheel, but I don't know if it's pushing the wheel in a good way.
I would say a long time ago, I had a conversation with a designer, Shannon Gem, and she is a, strong practice of biophilia in her work. And I love her work. And I think that she's remarkable. But that's something that she often said that she struggled with as a designer, that, sometimes it's, she's in California. So like a lot of times it might be a full renovation and you're taking out oak floors that are narrow plank to put
Mm.
in wide oak floors. And it just feels, so she started working with a company that would utilize the materials to reuse the materials because it's not
Yeah.
it's not even that old. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about something that was put in 5 years ago. And so sometimes it does feel performative. Sometimes it does feel like we're just in this consumer cycle of new, new, new. And the lack of interest in craftsmanship, just because we can get something that looks okay, but will be in a landfill in a few years because it's okay. Well, tambored cabinets are going to be out of style in 2 years. You know what I mean? And that kind of thing. Like, and it does get, especially surface materials, type.
Absolutely. I mean,
Flooring.
I think you can update a space, and I don't want to shoot myself in the foot again, but at the same time, you can update a space and make it look fresh with sometimes just like I said earlier, changing things around. Just have a new point of view, having a professional come in and shake things up.
Well,
And sometimes that's just enough. And
right.
I don't mind walking away from a project. I hate to say this, but I'm busy enough that I can say, you know, I met some clients this week and I said, you know what? Give me a couple of hours. I will move stuff around and I think you'll actually be happy because your list of questions, I don't think you need to renovate. I think you can tweak this, paint that, fix this, get a new couch because yours is, I think it's beyond. But
Mhm.
apart from that, you have everything you need. We just need to tweak it.
Right.
And because they really think that, oh, we thought we really had to, we look at all these magazines and we love that. We'd love to live in these interiors. And we think we have to redo everything and spend oodles of money.
Right. How do they feel when you come back and say that's not the answer?
They're always surprised. And I can see it in their eyes. They're questioning, is he really good? Yeah. What have I gotten myself into? But then, you know, everything is a test. So I'll prove something by just moving things around and saying, can I go get this in your bedroom? Can I go get that? And I give me a couple of minutes. Let me fix it. And fine. Some people won't do it, but I don't mind moving stuff around and say, okay, come back. And they go, where does this come from? They rediscover their own things.
Right. Right. I think we all have that happen
And
where
I do that
it's
in my
like
own home.
cool, but then and it's not even bad things. It's just like things we might have collected that are meaningful, but they just
Absolutely.
get put away and
Yep.
then you just kind of forget about, out of sight, out of mind.
Show me the boxes of stuff that you've put away. And at the end of the consultation, I just went, so all you're missing is an armchair. And
Right.
I would replace that lamp because it's beyond repair. But apart from that, you had everything. Okay, now we have to replace a couple of things in your bedroom and, other rooms. But the room that was the most important that you were thinking that needed really some attention, we have everything we need, slap some paint on the walls, and you're good.
Right.
You
Right.
know, don't follow any more trends. It's good. Repair this, repair that, done.
But besides, I think that those little things that we all have in our homes. I was down in we have a 3,600 square foot house, and our basement's kind of large, and so I was down there, and both of my parents, I mean, both of my parents have passed away a long time ago, but I have a lot of the things from their houses that we wanted to keep down in the basement. I just didn't want to, at the time deal with it. And I was discovering things that I'm like, oh, this is cool. This was like
Yeah.
a pot my uncle Eddie did, when he was in high school. It's like a beautiful pot, or this
Really?
little piece of art that my grandmother got in Turkey, or these interesting little things that you get and that are meaningful to you, and
Exactly.
they're just hidden away. Not even
I'm going to misquote it, but it was William Morris who said, have nothing in your home that you don't believe is useful or beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
right,
And
Yeah.
I would add the third is meaningful,
right.
Really?
I think
because
meaningful
you
means a
can have
lot.
something that's not maybe aesthetically perfect, but
Right,
if it's meaningful, it can be displayed, and then I'm going to quote somebody else, but it brings you joy.
right,
That's true.
Take it
right,
out, show it. It's your home. Make yourself
right.
happy. And rediscovering things is, once in a while doing the big clean of we're two people and we live in 800 square feet. And at one point there were two dogs in there. But anyway, that's also a choice that I've made, that I don't want bigger because I would just accumulate way too much. But it also keeps it somewhat down, but it makes it easier for me to rediscover and try new things. And I must admit,
I'm there with you. I'm thinking about downsizing myself. I'm
and it
ready
frankly,
for it.
it works for us, and
Yeah.
I do use my home as a laboratory to try stuff out, and try a paint color. I try it, but it also allows me to sometimes shake things up and say, okay, I will admit I have a locker, and so I visit the locker once in a while and say, okay, I need to bring a few things over, and then, oh, but this needs to come back. And but also getting a little older, that's the thing, is everything I look at, beautiful, useful, meaningful.
I love
You know
that.
what I
I
mean?
love that.
And for me, that's really important. Nothing here, or very little, even though I have a lot, but I mean, it's 800 square feet. I look around and everything has something to say, which is great. And I think it's Nate Berkus who always said, the house is the story of the people living there. It should tell the
Oh,
story. But for me, is I want to rediscover my own story every time.
so how do you
Yeah.
think interior design has changed in your career? Has It sounds like your philosophies are so set in stone, like it doesn't matter what era that is. Has that remained true to you?
The only thing that I really wanted when I started out is I had a feeling, actually, and this is coming from an art background, truly beautiful things will will pass the test of time. And truly good design will also pass the test of time. And I want to start out by saying, I want to do things, hopefully, that will stand the test of time. Whether it be a kitchen, a bathroom. I have visited projects I did 20 years ago, even in the period where I wasn't going crazy. And I think they still look good. They still look,
Right.
I'm thinking in French right now, but actuel, they look like they were done yesterday. Okay,
So
fine.
you had that want of timelessness.
Hopefully, it's something that's always driven me. Like, it has been a very driving force in my design. Hopefully, I want something that somebody will love for a very, very long time. I mean,
Well, I don't think that that's out of the realm of what artists, designers who have that art, who are artists in
yeah,
their soul. They're visiting ancient places and
yep,
seeing, buildings with millwork that is,
yeah,
you know, hundreds of years old or 1,000 years old in some respects, and bringing those motifs into
yeah.
our daily lives. And there is something about that that does really feel timeless. It does
And
really feel like it
and you
would
can
never
make it
change.
fresh. You can make it look like something that fits in today's world. I think that's the trick that we have to work on. Early on in my career, I had met somebody, a designer who was retiring, and they said, "Oh, you're never going to make any money if you do this timeless stuff. You need to do stuff that in every 3 years your client calls you and says, I need to redo it." And I made that decision very quickly. That hasn't changed. So that is set in stone. I would rather, I'm comfortable. I make a good living, but I'd rather have somebody whose home will age beautifully than me
Mhm.
and call me back every 3 years and say, we have to redo it.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear that. I'd rather make less money. I'd rather have
Right.
another client and another client. And what happens is those clients usually, I've had clients buy me for their children or gift me to their children. That I love. That means I'm not redoing their homes. I'm doing somebody else's. I'll do the cottage. I'll do that. But that to me was more important. So that is something that is somewhat set in stone. I don't want to do stuff that's going to disappear very quickly. But to say how it's evolved, I actually think that clients are more design savvy than they've ever been.
I agree. Well, they learn a lot
Yep.
more from television. They think they're
Lot,
design
they
savvy.
think.
Right.
And I mean, social media, that's a huge subject, but social media has informed clients more than ever, good and bad.
Right.
So how have things changed? I have actually, there was a peak point about 10, 12 years ago. I had been well published. I was in good magazines. It was the first time that I actually didn't have to give any references. People would just hire me. Well, it cycled, and people are now asking me to sell myself. Why would I hire you? And they're comparing me to firms that are new but have 50,000 people following them, and they have
Right.
that has changed. I
Right.
find they're a little more, not demanding, that wouldn't be the right term. They're a little more savvy. They're a little more, but I think that unfortunately is pushing towards newness, trends.
Mhm.
And that's to me, it's maybe a very general way of seeing it, but social media is in that respect making things new and bright and shiny more appealing.
Right.
And that's a little harder to deal with. So how has it changed for me is I tend to fight a little more. I'm not as easily, oh, you're the one I want to work with. I do get that, which is wonderful. But I have a list of a couple of designers. And so, you have 5 minutes and sell me your work. I hadn't done that in 15 years.
Wow.
Right. Right.
And I'll ask them, what are you basing yourself on? What's your list? How are you comparing? And I can see that social media has had a very big impact.
Really? I'm
I'm,
surprised. I
I'm
just
well, at
don't.
least for me, I'm seeing it quite a bit.
No, I agree.
You know what I would say just out
I
there,
agree.
if you're a designer who doesn't have the big social media presence and you're up against a designer that does have a big social
Yep.
media presence, and I don't mean this to tear down the designer who does, but I think that there are some savvy designers out there that are marketing really, really well with social media.
Yep.
But there are some very amazing designers who didn't go down that path and haven't dedicated the resources to social media because they were busy designing.
Mhm.
And when you're on social media, and if you're spending, social media is a job, and when
Yep.
you have
It is.
time to do social media well, that is not time you are spending designing. That is just
Completely
the fact.
agreeing. And to put it
So
even
Sure, yep.
further, somebody from a magazine, I won't name, but somebody from a magazine recently said, if I have if I have the opportunity to print your project or somebody else's, if things are, we love both projects. You have 4,000 people following you on Instagram and the other person has 20. Guess who we're going to publish?
right.
All things being equal.
I think that's a shame. I think that's
But
a shame. That's the approach.
that's one magazine. I'm not saying they all do that.
Sure.
But
And I do think people are thinking about eyeballs.
Yep.
I think they're thinking always a little bit about eyeballs. We just had a big conversation in the private group community on Instagram, on Facebook, about, design celebrities in, being asked to speak at events and how that makes a designer feel that isn't considered a celebrity. And They'd rather see, designers who are in the trenches doing the work than somebody who's celebrity. And there's something to be said for both. I mean, there are people who are bringing the eyeballs to the occasion, and there are sponsors that are paying for those eyeballs. I mean,
Yep.
that's just the way that works. But and on the same respect, you always have the biggest O to the audience that's listening and making sure that they're getting quality advice.
And that's hard.
And that sometimes it's a balance of picking
Sure.
the right people that have that experience and longevity.
Yep.
Been in the business a long time, have rolled with the punches. And speaking of that, if you were telling somebody who maybe they are starting out, maybe they have done well on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, something that about the interior design industry as a piece of advice so that they can stand the test of time. They themselves can stand the test of time. What would one piece of advice you would give someone who is in those shoes?
Maybe this is the wrong direction. Maybe the people that are doing Instagram would hate me, or social media would hate me.
It's okay.
Put nothing out that you are not 100% happy with. Or
That's
if you do, there should be a reason. I'll give you an example. Usually what I put out, I'm happy with. I'm very careful of what I put out. It's either really polished, and because it is my image and it's what I'm putting out, I have to be happy with it. Text included. The text has to be good as well. Sometimes I put out stuff that's not magazine worthy, but it conveys a point.
Right.
Look at the before and how, but I'm conveying that I'm working on this 3,000 square foot penthouse. So it conveys something important. I love working on these kind of projects. I don't put out just anything. So what I'm saying is, don't put out anything that you are not comfortable with. It is findable, and it represents you.
Right.
So yes, if you want to hire somebody, just make sure that you have transmitted who you are.
Right. That's true. I mean, you don't want to become, just even with a big account, some nameless, faceless person. You're a person.
Yep.
You're an artist.
You have a vision, and what makes you different. That's actually a niece of mine a long time ago said, you know what, dear uncle, your social media sucks. Do something about it. And I went, okay, well, give me pointers. And she said something about consistency. And she just said, she used a word I don't like using, but, she said, if you were a brand, make sure that you're on top of things and it looks that you are happy with everything that you're putting out, that it supports your look, your message, who you are, that it is consistent and faithful to who you are. Just don't put anything out. And I agree with that. I mean, some people don't do it, and that's fine. It could work for them. But I've been very careful of putting out stuff that resonates with me and that carries my brand. And I think that's important.
I think that you're very right. I would put the caveat in there that you should also be okay with exploring it. I don't think it needs to be perfect. I mean, I think that there are studies that have proven it doesn't have to be polished in order to people respond to real. So, and you always should remember who you're speaking to. And I think remember that you're speaking to a client who is going to go through renovation and what they must be feeling, what their motivations are, and remembering the client and even envisioning who you might be speaking to as a person, like as a human being.
That's why
very helpful.
That's why I put out two kinds of things. One that I'm very happy that puts out a more polished version of what I can do, and the rest that is more fun about the process.
Yes.
And
it teaches people by the time they do hire you what it is like working for you.
But I'm going to do a part 2 of the answer. I'm sorry to stretch it, but
go ahead.
I had a lovely conversation with another designer recently, and she said something really important. She changed her direction in her social media because she said, I was speaking too much to other designers.
Right. We talk about this a lot.
I feel seen.
In the end, they're not going to hire me.
No.
Yes, I do have to look good because I know that if I'm published or things like that, they want to see what I'm doing. If, that's important too. But I have to, like you said, I have to know who's the audience and who I'm
Who the
speaking.
audience is. Yeah. And what are their fears, frustrations, and desires? What are
Absolutely.
they interested in?
That's why I
And how do
started
you handle
putting,
that?
and that's why, again, about the control thing, I put out two things. I've accepted and assume, and I'm fully responsible for the fact that I have a weird sense of humor, and it's actually the one thing that I know it'll work well with a client when I can make them laugh. That to me is the immediate test. And I've started assuming that and saying that's part of me. So there are two things that you'll find on my social media: quirkiness and polished.
Well, I personally love quirkiness, and I love a sense of humor. That's my
Yeah.
favorite thing in a person in general. If they don't have a
Good.
sense of humor, we really kind of can't be friends.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's sometimes, I push that, but again, it's being faithful to myself and true to myself. And that's why my social media has to represent that. And so I said, you know what? If I want to talk to a client, and I've had clients who said, I love the fact that there's some serious and not so serious, but it's still a good mix, that there's
Right.
some serious and not so serious look just all over.
Well,
Yeah,
it's showing different
absolutely.
parts of who you are. And that's authenticity to me. That's authentic to who you are. And you might, there are designers I know that are very serious designers, and they're not approaching it with a sense of humor, and that's okay. That's who they are.
Absolutely.
That needs to come through too, your own personality, because that's at the end of the day, that's who the client is going to be hiring. It's
Absolutely.
you.
Because
Yeah.
our relationships are not, I'm not, occasionally I do transactions, or consultations that last a day. But if I'm lucky, I have clients that I've known for 20 years, and we've gotten to know each other, and they like my kind of jokes.
Right.
That's a great relationship. And so, I have to be myself.
Right. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a few questions about you're a Canadian designer,
Yes.
and there's been some recent news,
What
headlines about, America
what?
and Canada.
No.
How are you feeling right now about working with U.S. companies? Is this going to impact your business in any way? How have you been approaching the headlines?
Okay. Speaking for myself professionally and personally, I'm very sad about this whole situation.
I think we all are.
So, and as a Canadian, I hate to say this, but I am kind of, well, it's actually my clients that are actually asking me to boycott the US.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
I know. I mean, we
Yep.
can't ask if we don't want to hear the hard truths.
There's some companies that I just love. Hardware, furniture, plumbing. There's some companies that I just love, and I don't want to stop buying. And because they're companies that I respect, they do beautiful work. They're not a multinational. They're a small company, and they just do beautiful products. I hate penalizing these people.
Right.
Because again, it's people.
The people. Yeah.
It's people.
Yeah.
I have some clients, and this is in the past week, who called me up and said, have you put the deposit down for the plumbing? And it's a relatively huge order. And
Right.
I said, no, I was literally giving my credit card as we speak to put the deposit. I won't mention the names, but it's pretty much 90% American.
Right.
They said, cancel the order. I'm going for plan B, which is the Italian ones, which is 30% more.
American companies
didn't
need
care.
to be hearing this.
And
So, I mean, this
Yeah.
is, this is part of the consequences of one's own actions. So
it's for them,
really hard, especially because, for so many of us,
Yep.
it's so much out of our hands. Like
I know. For them, for my clients, and I said, so what do you want to accomplish with this? You're penalizing yourself. You're paying 30% more. They said, if the company if they're losing, they need to speak up and talk to their representatives and say,
Right.
it's affecting me.
Right.
But I don't like playing that kind of game, but I've actually seen clients just in the past week. I have canceled. I work by myself. I have different kinds of projects, And I think I've canceled $70,000 worth of stuff in the last week.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Are you going to those companies? Just curious. Are you going to those companies and telling them that they lost the sale?
My distributor will contact them because
Okay.
I don't have a direct relationship to them.
Okay.
In some cases, yes. And I'm sad to say this, but yeah, I've actually
I
asked.
have the ear of some of these manufacturers, so when we get offline, I'd love to tell
I,
further, because
sure.
I sometimes do like to tell them, look,
I've
these are
spoken
things that
and
are
I've spoken
happening.
to my distributor here and said, listen, we're changing the order. And this is why my clients who've asked. And they said, we understand. And I said, but I would like for you to tell the company if you have their ear. I still respect who they are. I love their,
Oh, sure.
and I hope it doesn't last long. I don't want it to.
Right.
I've sold their products. I have some of their products.
Right.
And, hopefully this will be resolved soon.
I hope so too. Because we do a lot, interior design community. We actually have quite a few members in Canada, and we have good relationships with lots of different Canadian companies, both
Good.
working in the PR side or manufacturing side or the designers. And so off the top of my head, when I think of those companies, I think of the
Yep.
people.
I think
I'm
people
sure
do.
you feel the same way about the Americans that you work with.
Yep.
It's just like you're thinking about
I have some American clients who have a pied-à-terre in Montreal, and they thought I dropped them. I said, there was no way.
No. Oh.
Why?
Well, it is kind of embarrassing. I think we're a little embarrassed.
They actually, I said, no. I'm not a horrible person. Hopefully you don't think this of me. But I said, I understand where you're coming from, and, it's not going to happen.
But
Right.
Lori, you're right. It is embarrassing because when I was
It
in
is.
Italy, and people were asking me, so where are you from? I normally, asked you, oh, America. I didn't want to say it. I was like,
Well, my
was like
Irish
America.
designers, when I was in Ireland, we're all talking about it.
Well, I went to Mexico in February. I was in Mexico City and then went to Merida, as we were talking earlier. It hadn't happened in about close to 10 years that my Spanish isn't that great yet. I'll get there. But taxi driver, Uber drivers.
Yes.
Everybody.
Yes.
Where are you from? Oh, are you American? I have rarely, with my husband, we were talking more in French between us, just so I hate to say that there was no confusion. Are you French or are you from Quebec? Because if we talk in English, I could see their faces,
Yeah.
and we'd immediately say, oh, I'm not from the States. And I hate to say that.
I know. I know.
We would say it, and then we'd follow it up with, we hate, and
okay. We hate the situation.
Yeah.
But it's so how am I working right now? It is affecting work, whether I like it is
affecting work.
It is. In our case, I'm not going to speak for all of Canada, but I will speak to being a Canadian designer. The insecurity it's launched in our country has had the impact of some clients backing out of projects.
Right.
Or putting them on hold.
It has on this side too.
Yep.
Just,
they're
this
putting in
order. I have designers and DMs who are telling me they're making cutbacks, they're laying off staff, but on the flip side of that, went to Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, and the builders were there in force. And that usually is a very good sign for design, because if the builders designers show up in a good or a bad economy because they always are learning.
Yeah.
But builders usually don't show up unless there's projects. So the fact that they are paying for their whole teams to come is a good sign, but it's still, the uncertainty of it all.
Yep. It's the uncertainty.
Nervous. And we're all very nervous.
And in the past 3 weeks, I think I have personally received as many emails as I usually get in a year from suppliers in the States who looked up probably interior designer, Montreal, Canada, or whatever, and really, really beautiful emails. We're doing this work. You might have purchased us before. This is what we have to offer. We're a mom and pop, shop, and selling their wares, and hopefully we can keep working together.
Right.
And
Yes.
in the past 3 weeks, I have received a lot of these emails,
Right. Right.
which is great. And I find that it's very proactive, and I'm really happy to see this. So to me, it gives me a lot of hope that
Right.
probably things will change because people will keep contact with people.
Right. Right. And remember that we
Yep,
are all people at the end of the day trying
absolutely.
to, make it through, make it through this.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Here, I mean, it's just the insecurity. And so some people have pulled out of projects, they're just waiting,
Right.
which is to me very normal. And, but I also try to guide them through that we can tweak a few things, and quite frankly, because some people who have placements and stuff like that, the market is really insecure right now. And they say, in the past month, the market has dipped down, so that's not good for us. So that's what scares some clients off. But generally, I mean, I think it's going to become old news very quickly at some point, and people will just say, and going back to the beginning of our conversation, make myself happy in my home to make myself feel more secure.
Right. Right.
It's going to get back to that.
Yeah, well, of course, because at the end of the day, that's what we need for ourselves. And
Absolutely. So
I
people
think
are,
in times of uncertainty, we need it even more.
yep. I think that's
We
going
need it
to
even more.
be, people will turn away from it and say, okay, let's turn off the news and start thinking about, just we have to go back to our daily life.
Insular
Yep.
community,
What I can tell you is people are
find your
traveling,
circles.
they're rethinking their travel. That I can see around me. They're rethinking,
Right.
which can be good for me because that might make them want to renovate a little more, which is good.
Right. Right.
But yeah,
Now, speaking of brands, are there
yeah,
any go-to Canadian brands that you love and want to shout out?
there are way too many. But I mean, in Montreal specifically, there's some beautiful brands that I've always loved. And for some reason, Montreal is lucky to have several companies that create these just amazing light fixtures. And I can name a few that I worked with for years, and they're just wonderful. There's Luminaire Authentique that are actually, I just got an email from them. They're celebrating 10 years.
Cool.
There's Tungsten Luminaire, again, beautiful lighting. And there's a small shop, Anaka. He does just amazing lighting. It's great to see that there's so much talent here and people doing such beautiful stuff. And yes, I have kind of turned a little more attention to them. There's some beautiful furniture manufacturers here that we're very lucky, like Perez Furniture, who have been around for a long time and just do beautiful work. I mean, those are people that maybe I had been not ignoring. I was forgetting about them. And the past couple of weeks, I've sort of saying, oh yeah, they're still around.
Yeah. Right.
My clients want to rediscover them. So those
I
are
love that. I love
people.
that. And rediscovering brands that are near us. I mean, that's better in long term for sustainability sometimes too.
But for me,
Yeah.
prior to all of this, I consider the States as our allies and friends and neighbors.
Sure.
And to me, the sustainability is you're not that far.
Right.
It's a truckload. It's not a plane. It's not a boat.
Right.
And I used to favor quite a bit staying in North America.
Right.
Because there's so much expertise. I will give a shout out to the US for hardware, plumbing, furniture. You have so many amazing people, and lighting. You have so many amazing people. I want to keep contact, and hopefully things will get better.
I hope so too. I hope that, we have some Canadian designers who make it to High Point. I really hope that continues.
Are you seeing a drop in Canadians going to the shows?
I'm not sure. I'm going to follow up with their team to find out, but I would hope that we are still maintaining those relationships because there are so many amazing designers. And when I was in Ireland too, I was like, coming to High Point is such a wonderful experience for so many designers because it's such it really, I've been to a lot of shows and honestly, it's got everything. So it's overwhelming. Don't get me wrong. It is overwhelming because it has everything.
You're going to be surprised. I never go to these shows.
It's so massive. but it's so, I can't even describe the energy and the feeling of being able to like have the, like you walk down the, the street and you run into this person and you run into that person and you see this beautiful thing and you see that beautiful thing. And it's just, it's overwhelming. The senses are overloaded.
That's probably why.
Goodness. But it can be, Niall is an introverted person. So it can be a lot. It can be a lot. And there are moments where you need like a minute. Like I'm not an introvert.
Look good.
As you can tell. And I get peopled out.
I'm lucky to have been to be 28 years now with an extrovert, because I would just go to cocktails and stand in the corner, have a drink, and watch people go by.
That's Niall. And I'm dragging him over from that corner and being like, "You've got to meet Niall. He's so great."
And that's when I started dragging my husband around, and he's the one who would present me, and these were industry cocktails, and he's the one saying, "Oh, Stéphane's a designer," and I'm going, "What? I want to go home." So it's only recently that I've started, picking up on those clues, but I'm a little more socially, I'm getting better, but it still drains me of energy. So when I go to, IDS in Toronto, it's 2-3 days, and then I'm just drained for a week.
Right.
So those shows, I don't know if I could put up with it. So the way I deal with it is I talk to designers who go, and they quickly run down the best things, or I'll read the magazines and the resumes, and I'm going, yeah, that's enough for me. Yeah, it's good.
I don't think
I'm good.
I think you would be such a star there. I mean,
yeah, you would.
Love
You'd
to
be a rock
see
star.
you. And honestly,
Thank you.
it's the people that I think are the biggest asset.
I know.
Or in-person conversations, like people you've talked to in the community.
That is true.
For as long as you've talked to in the community, and then you get to see them in real life. It's just, it's so remarkable.
Last IDS,
I'm always finding new people that I'm like, I don't think we've met in person yet.
Well, that's great.
That's so crazy.
The last,
I feel like I know everything about them.
The last interior design show in Toronto that I went to, I'm the one who always wants to be in the background, like I said, and I think I do good work, but I've always been kind of shy and all this. So having people come up to me and take that courage and say, "I really love what you do," is just an amazing feeling.
Oh, it is. It's rewarding and rewarding and wonderful to be able to be in the presence of people who do such beautiful things.
And that's actually a lesson I learned. And I said, you're cutting yourself off from this communication.
Right.
And even saying, let's stay in touch, when you start your career, let's stay in touch. And, I think that I would have loved for somebody to do that. So,
we learn so much from our community.
Those things give me the kick in the pants to, I need to go out more. I need to.
Yeah. I will have to drag you. We'll have to drag you and have you come sometime, because we do a lot of programming at
Well, tell me there's food and I'll go.
There is. We're actually going to be having a party on Sunday afternoon, 3:30 to 5:30 at Curry & Company. I want everyone listening to come, because they have completely renovated their showroom and it's going to be off the hook. We're going to be having so much fun, and there's going to be a lot of food and a lot of drinks and a lot of fun. You can't.
Gotta be there. Damn.
Yes. It's going to be fantastic.
Good times.
It is. It's always fantastic in the Curry & Company showroom, but
and we can stand in the corner together.
Yes. Niall will be like, "I'm right there with you," and I'll be dragging you both out. You gotta meet this person. You've got to meet this person, Niall.
No.
He's a rock star. People love him.
I'm always the one that's starstruck and say, "Oh my God, this person."
Me too.
And it's so funny. Too. They're all starstruck to meet him too. They're like, "It's Niall." I was just telling a designer when I was at KBiz, Carla Aston. Remember we ran to her?
Yes. Yeah.
And Niall, I was like, as soon as you left, Niall was like, "I can't believe you know Carla Aston." And I was like, and I was telling her the story, and she's like, "I couldn't believe you knew Niall Jones."
That's great.
That's hilarious.
I think that's so funny. The fan clubs that happen with designers, and it's just such a wonderful experience, because you all have that common thread of this love of design, and that's what makes. I mean, I would bet in a perfect community building, like if I could put a neighborhood of designers together, if I could do some some urban planning and put a group of designers together, what fun they would have.
Oh my
Because
God.
you know what I mean? Like, think of all the people we've met, Niall, on the
Yeah.
podcast. We lived all in the same neighborhood.
Oh
Oh
my
my
God. That would
goodness.
be the best.
That would be but it would be a very, very, very pretty neighborhood.
Oh
That would
my
be
goodness. The
beautiful.
most beautiful neighborhood,
Yeah.
with the coolest people,
Yeah.
with the best cocktails and the best
No
food, with the
HOA
best
issues at
music.
all, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Just utopia,
Oh,
designer utopia. We should create like a retirement community someday. Like
Oh
just
my God, yeah.
designer only
It's like
artists.
exactly.
Marigold Hotel, but for designers.
For designers, exactly. Yeah. Oh my God, I love that movie.
Yeah.
What has been the hardest business decision that you have had to make in your career?
Oh, that's a really good one.
I know, right? Oh,
Hardest decision. But it was hard at the time, but it was necessary. Coming back and working from home.
right,
I actually did it just before COVID.
right.
And so that I was doing it because it was just, there was too much stuff. It was too expensive and I need to cut things down. It was really hard because I felt I was going to lose a bit of my identity.
Right.
So that was a hard decision, and I said, I'm going to be working from home. Are people going to take me seriously? Because I wouldn't necessarily, some clients, I wouldn't have a problem with them coming into my home.
I mean, what perfect timing though. Everybody was working from home.
And
during COVID.
that good, a couple of months later, COVID hit.
Right.
So one less rent, it was just
Yeah. I mean,
fortunate.
that couldn't have been worked out more perfect. Did you plan COVID? Because it's just very
We'll talk about that some other time because I was just telling a client how much I hate to say this, but I kind of enjoyed COVID in the sense that, when you're an introvert, going down the street, walking my dog, and there's just no one, happiness, just pure
Oh my
happiness.
God.
Going to do the groceries and it's 10 people max, happiness.
The best.
But
it
but
had its features and benefits.
after a little
Yeah.
while, I was missing people, but it was a hard decision because I felt I was giving up something.
Right.
So the timing, and then it flipped to a good decision.
Yeah.
It was a good decision in the end. So it was hard at the time, but you know what? All roads led to where I am now. So,
Well, that leads me to our last question. I really want to know, what is the most rewarding moment of your career so far?
oh, wow. Rewarding. There have been many. It's hard to pick.
It always is. I mean,
And
when
it really is.
here,
Right? There's a
so
lot.
many moments of joy that you bring to others,
there-
right?
There are many. At this point, there are many, but one stands out because it just hit at the right time. I was in Mexico and quick story, I got an email from somebody in a showroom in Montreal congratulating me that I had made it to our national, one of the big national magazines here is Canadian House and Home. And she writes to me, congratulations on making Canada's Top 100. And I went, what? What? This must be a joke. So, I'm just wondering, is this a joke? And anyway, she congratulates me and she then sends me a photo like that she took of the magazine with her phone. And at the same time, I got the official email. It did change something because it was unexpected and it's not something I applied to. It wasn't a lottery. It was just something that dropped out of the sky and it was wonderful.
Wow.
Right.
And
Being recognized
it-
for that you do.
and why it was so good at that moment is I was actually questioning, where am I going? Where am I going?
Divine timing.
I truly love what I do. I will be deciding on a new kitchen and I'll die happy.
Right.
Hopefully that's, something like that will happen. But at that moment I was going, this isn't working out like I want. And what should I do? Should I just move to Mexico and open a B&B? What am I doing? I got this email and it kind of said, "You're where you're supposed to be."
Right.
And so that was a really important moment.
I, I
And
love
it,
that this happened without. So we just had a designer who wrote in today about awards,
mhm. Yeah, I
and
saw
I didn't real. First of all, I didn't. I guess I'm naive that I didn't realize that some awards cost money to.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably did know that, but that wasn't on my radar. And I've been a judge
Mhm.
of awards
Well,
for
some awards I found out that it's just easier to go through a PR firm, and that costs a lot of money.
right, right. But I
So,
love that this was not that. That if you're going to pick 100 top designers of anything, that
yeah.
it should be just based on the work and not
And I was just
an expensive submission process.
exactly. I was just floored because it was out of the blue and it felt really good.
I love it.
And
I think that this is a key thing because I honestly think too that it's amazing that this happened at the right time for
yeah,
you, which is that alone is phenomenal. But also it brings up a good point that we as an interior design industry need to make sure we are nurturing artists and
mm,
that there are more awards, that
yeah,
there are more opportunities for designers to be recognized. It is a hard job,
it is.
and it often is thankless. I mean, you might get the thank you
Mm,
at the end, client's happy, but you had 2 years of the client being unhappy with a lot of things to
Yep.
get to that point
Yep.
where they love the result. So that part of it, you know how when you have someone who's critical of you and they're critical of you maybe 5 times, it takes, they say it takes 3 compliments to overdo one person saying one critique.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way the design industry works.
Yeah.
It's 10 critiques for every one compliment.
Yeah.
So
Well, I remember somebody telling me that one poop cancels out 10 attaboy.
right,
Yeah, it is
right,
sometimes just that one little, you know, that's something actually that could be a complete other conversation. But during COVID, I actually had a conversation with myself and said, what do I need to eliminate? And one thing was, I will never be getting my satisfaction and the pats on the back from clients. That's not where I should be getting it. I should be doing that myself.
right,
With clients, I don't put up with as much crap as I used to. And I make sure that the relationships are good. We're talking about humor. We're talking about all of that. For me, it's really important that I steer things in the right direction.
right.
And that also was a big moment in my life when I said, what do I need to get rid of? It was during COVID. What are the things that are really stressing me out and I need to get rid of? And that was another big day that I made the decision of I need to eliminate things that are just making my life hell.
Right.
Why am I
An
doing that?
external validation
Yeah.
from the client.
And
Like
validation.
you're going to do good work.
Yep.
You're going to handle the problems.
Yep.
You're not going to take on their
Validation is
problems.
I have
Like
to know that I'm doing good work and I'm a good problem solver. That's why I think that, House and Home Top 100 came as a surprise and just at the right moment.
I love that.
Andrew Martin was really flattering because again, you just present a portfolio, you don't give anything, you don't no money, and they just pick. That was just beyond. I actually haven't even digested that one yet, but I had applied. So, you put your hat in the ring but the other one just came as a total surprise and it was just wonderful.
I think it's wonderful when that happens. Sometimes people have, submitted IDC for things. We always love it because it's always a shock to me that we won anything. Like I'm just like
it feels good.
Thing ever. And I think but I do think there needs to be more accolades and not in a meaningless way, but there just needs to be more ways to celebrate the work that designers
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
And the more that we can do it in ways that it is unexpected, that it is just reward for being great at what you do.
Start a new award.
Right. Right. Yes. I love it. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. We'll make sure all of our members and listeners know exactly where to find you and how to follow you and become one of your friends.
Excellent. I
need
more friends.
We build community. introverted that you are now Niall's friend. You guys would
That's
be
right.
getting together, hanging out.
Excellent. And I'll bring the wine, and we can
Yes,
be in the corner just holding the glass of wine.
we love
That's a
it.
plan. That's a plan.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Hopefully, yes.